Now let's talk about grid history. To access grid history, you can hover over Data Catalog and click Grid History. You can then enter your search criteria and click Search. Now, I would recommend at least entering your user ID, and that'll bring back all of the grids that are attached to your user ID. If you have a coworker that you share IMA responsibilities with, you could enter their user ID and you would see the grids that are associated with their ID. So if they're out sick or they're out on vacation, you can make sure that items do not fall through the cracks and they do get set up. So over on the left, you will see some different icons that list the status, as well as a status description. So after we first approved the grid in the previous video, we saw the queued graphic because it was waiting to be processed. Then it went to the blue running man graphic because it was busy and it was currently processing. From there, we would either see the check for errors icon or the completed icon. One thing I did forget to mention, make sure if you need a record of the KSN numbers that you do copy those down before you click approve. Once an item is approved and the grid is completed, you will not be able to re-access that grid to get those KSNs. Some additional icons you might see, I pointed this one out at the beginning of the new item grid demo. The grid icon with the exclamation point in red, that means that it's initiated but it hasn't yet been saved. And then the one below that, where it has the green check mark, that means it's just active. So you've initiated it, you've saved it, you just haven't approved it yet. Now there are 4 different grid types. The one we were working on was a new item grid, and so it was indicated by an N. We also have a changes grid, a returned new items grid, and a return changes grid. And we'll be talking about some of these additional grids in session 3. Alright, so now we're going to go back into IMA and we're going to bring up my grid history to re-access the grid that I had just approved. So once you hit approve, you can let it stay on that screen and it'll automatically refresh with the status, but you don't have to wait for it to process. You could go ahead and go back to your new item task list and start working on another group of items. You could exit out of Internet Explorer completely. So if you did navigate away from that page, you access it by hovering over Data Catalog and going to Grid History. So now I'm going to enter my user ID and click Search. Okay, so this is the grid that I had just approved in the previous video. It says check for errors, so we need to actually go in and see what errors this grid is getting and then resolve those errors and reapprove the grid. So to re-access a grid, you can click this grid button right here under the action column. You'll notice none of these have that button because they are showing as completed. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and click the grid button to re-access. And there's 2 different ways you can look at your errors. There's an option at the top of the screen where you can click this plus sign to explode it out and then scroll through. And if you don't have that many errors, this is fine. But if you have a lot of errors, it can be really difficult to really see them all in this small little area of the screen. So I recommend clicking this View Errors in New Window link. It's going to open up all of your errors in a new window. It gives you some more space, makes it easier to see what you're looking at. So you'll notice I have some errors and some warnings. As I've mentioned before, warnings can be completely ignored, so we're not actually going to do anything with the warnings. We only want to look at the errors. And you'll see here, it looks like all of my errors have to do with converted cube. So the carton is less than the sum of the each's cube. correct the each or carton dimensions to be accurate. Okay, so let's go look at that. Now, depending on which errors you get back, sometimes those errors will automatically display in this default view, and they may even be highlighted in red. I don't know why only some of the fields do that. It's really helpful when they do that because you don't have to go looking for them. But for this one, we do have to go find it because it's not showing here in the default view. So our dimensions is going to be located on the Packages tab. So I'm going to click Packages. Now we can see, again, my scroll bar disappeared down here at the bottom. So if you want to access it, just use the scroll bar on the right side of your screen to move down, and now I can access my scroll bar at the bottom. So I'm going to scroll to the right. So it says my cube sum value for my carton dimensions doesn't add up quite right. So let's say we have right here, my eaches have a cube sum value of 48. Now there are 6 total eaches in this carton. So if I want to find out what the minimum has to be, I would take 48 multiplied by the quantity, so that's going to be 6. So that means the minimum of my cube sum value for my carton has to be at least 288. So I was way off with my dimensions. So I'm going to fix that here. Move this to 12 and so that's more than 288. I don't think it's too high. If you go way too high, you would get an error as well, but I think that's within the allowance in the allowable limits. So I'm going to go ahead and approve. So we'll see here again, it's queued. Now when the screen refreshes again, you will see the blue running man and it will say processing, and it'll go through that until it comes back as either completed or it comes back with more errors. So we'll give it just a minute. It's still processing. So if you ever get an error and you're not sure how to fix it, you can always reach out to the help desk. They will try to help you interpret those errors and tell you how to fix it. They won't necessarily fix them for you, but they'll help you learn how to read them and figure out where you should be going to fix those. Alright, so this came back. Now I can see my status description for this grid is completed. So everything is good to go.